with our guy Ian Beckles joining us for his weekly visit at 12:30. What's going on, brother? How are you?
Good afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Let's start right there, man. What did you think of the whole Kendrick Lamar and the halftime show and kind of the backlash where it's, you kind of typical, you kind of knew who loved the halftime show and who hated it too.
Uh, over here at a dignitary, I think most people liked it. Um, for myself, I thought it was choreographed well. I thought the music was sounded good. I don't know if Kendrick Lamar is big enough of a star to do it by himself. Like, I didn't think that it was bad, but when you talk about having 50 Cent there and Eminem there and those big names, I thought that was a bigger deal.
Right.
The whole diss thing, it's kind of weird that a diss track is the best. I mean, one of the number one songs ever. I didn't think that would be the case ever in hip hop music. But poor Drake, he's my countryman, my former countryman. But poor Drake, I couldn't imagine him even watching the Super Bowl. I think that'd be tough.
Who had
But
the worst? Who had a worse night last night, Drake or Patrick Mahomes?
Patrick Mahomes at least got to the Super Bowl. Drake didn't win it in any way. Nobody said good. At least they brought his name up. I don't think anybody did that. So I will give Drake had a rougher night.
I agree with you. It's kind of funny last night in like the first half or the first quarter of the game. A lot of people on Twitter, and I know you're more on Instagram and Twitter, but everybody's talking about how the biggest story of this game is in the trenches. And I said, wow, what a shock.
Yeah, right.
And it's not just the Super Bowl, Beck, right? It's not just this Super Bowl. It's not every Super Bowl. It's every single NFL game. And you and I were kind of going back and forth, but I don't know if anybody realized the disparity between the Philadelphia defensive line and the Kansas City offensive line because, man, they owned it from the start and they did not let up.
Well, I mean, you hit on the nose. I think. Well, I put money on Kansas City, so I'm not going to sit here and say that I know a whole lot of anything. Okay, so, but I did say last week if there's a team that's built to beat Kansas City, it's Philadelphia. And
Right.
after the game, I don't think I could have been any more right about that. There was a disparity. I mean, I'm not just going to say their D line. Boy, their offensive line kept Jalen Hurts very, very clean.
Right.
And when Jalen Hurts had to make a decision, he made a split, second decision. He ran the ball. He got himself out of a lot of jams. I thought both lines and Jalen Hurts' legs were the difference in the game yesterday. It didn't really get the coaching for me. It really didn't. I think if you put Andy Reid on the other side and Sirianni on the other side, I mean, Philadelphia would have still won. It wasn't down to coaching. Philadelphia was just so much better in the trenches. I didn't think it was that far of a discrepancy, but they beat the crap out of Kansas City. That's real.
The one thing that I didn't like when it comes to the coaching, and you and I are of the same vein of like, I think blaming the coaching sometimes is such an overblown part of sports. But the one thing I didn't like was that Andy Reid abandoned the run so early. I mean, 3 runs for Kareem, 3 runs for Isaiah Pacheco. And I was
Yeah.
just like, damn, man. And I know that they like the short passing game as an extension of their run game, Ian, but that's the one thing that bothered me is you look at Saquon Barkley. And if I tell you before the game that Saquon Barkley was going to run the ball 25 times for only 50-something yards, you're like, damn, Kansas City probably did a good job. They probably hung in this game, but they got blown out. But what did Philly do? Even though Saquon didn't go off, Beck, you always say it. It's not about the yards. It's about the attempts. And if you're Andy Reid and they're just pinning their ears back and beating you with 4, you got to run the ball to kind of get some pressure off of Patrick Mahomes. So do you agree, at least in that aspect of like Andy Reid maybe could have utilized the run a little bit more to help out his team?
Well, you're always better if you could run the football, but when you're down 17-0, there's times where the defense will give you 5 yards. You know what I'm saying? It's going to take a long time for you to score. Listen, in a perfect world, Andy Reid wants to run the football. That would have been the last thing on his mind last night. When you got to score that many points, I've been in games when you're down by 20-something points, and the coaches will tell you, you can forget about running the football, boys. Put on your track shoes. Here we go. So I think we got into that situation, and once you get into that situation, it is 100% unequivocally on the defense. when you can't run, when they know you're not running the ball anymore, or go ahead and run it for 5 yards.
Right.
We're pinning it back. We're rushing. You might get 5, 6 yards. Then you'll be 2nd and 4, but the clock is still ticking. Once it gets to that situation, it just leans so much to the defense. And Patrick Mahomes was seeing ghosts yesterday. He got hit early. He got hit often, and it got to a point where he was getting the hell out of that pocket. And there was nothing wrong with the pocket. He was just imagining the pocket breaking down. And to make Patrick Mahomes see ghosts, he hasn't done that since Raymond James a few years ago when the Buccaneers did the same thing.
That's why when people say about, all right, Patrick Mahomes and he was dancing around in the pocket. I mean, it's hard not to. It's hard not to, because if you look at Tom Brady, I just said this before, if you say Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes are the two greatest quarterbacks of all time, let's just put it like that, right? Regardless of where they're in. They both lost now combined 5 times in the biggest games of their lives. And why? What's the common thread between the Giants, the Eagles, and the Bucs? Is that they got after the passer and they won the battle in the trenches. So what do you say to those people that say the conversation of the GOAT is over and this defines Patrick Mahomes' legacy? Because I look at it as kind of hard, that conversation, when he's only 29. He's still going to be playing for another decade or so. Is this one of those losses, though, because it was probably worse than what we've seen from Tom's Super Bowls, that is impossible for him to come back from?
I hate comparing players. I just hate it. They're not the same animals, okay? And listen, I know that Mahomes and Brady play the same position, okay? We could talk about Jordan and LeBron, okay? They're two. You can compare them. That's fine. And Jordan's better because he won this many finals. Well, let me ask you this. LeBron's first loss in the finals when he was in Cleveland, if you put Jordan on that team, does that win the championship? Do they win?
Probably not.
We don't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask everybody
and we don't know
this
that.
question.
Yeah, right.
Well, let me ask everybody this question. If Tom Brady's the GOAT and you put Tom Brady against the Buccaneers or against Philadelphia yesterday, does he win? I dare you to say yes.
No way.
There's not a chance. So this is not rocket science, When Tom Brady wins, he gets pass protection, he gets a running game, and he has a defense that's balling out. What the hell? Mahomes didn't have any of that yesterday. So just comparing two people in team sports from results from teams, to me, doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
But if anything, you look at that game last night, and you're like, damn, the Buccaneers need to make sure they get some pass rushers.
Yeah, but now everybody wants to say, oh, they found the equation to beat Patrick Mahomes. Okay, they found the equation to beat any quarterback. Do you have those 4 defensive linemen? If you don't, well, you don't have the equation. So it's not quite that easy. Oh, the Buccaneers did it in Philadelphia. Boy, those are quite a few years apart. And in between, Mahomes was kicking a lot of ass. That's what I know.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, too, because if I would have told any Kansas City Chiefs fan before the game that you were going to hold Saquon to about 50 yards and that Jalen Carter would have no sacks and no tackles, you probably would say we won that game, right? Isn't it crazy? And that's why I think more than anything, we go back into the conversation that you and I have a lot. Yeah, it's great to go get a Saquon Barkley, but the reason why he worked so well in the regular season and the postseason is because you have a team that likes to run the football and an offensive line. Yeah, Jalen Carter's a great player, but there was guys making plays last night. Milton Johnson, like nobody was going into this game. You and I were, or excuse me, Milton Williams. Nobody was going into this game last night going, watch out for Milton Williams.
Yeah, right.
That's the thing, is guys show up every single time in these big games and they contribute. And a lot of times it's the dudes in the trenches. What was there anything else that stood out about that game that surprised you from that contest?
Well, now that I look back at the game, if I ask you who balled out offensively for Philadelphia, who would you say?
I mean, I guess Hurts, but I mean, even then, I mean, you look at the overall statistics at the end of the game and you go, all right, well, it wasn't as good as his first performance. 17 of 22, 221, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He did get sacked a couple of times. Like, he didn't throw for as many yards nor as many touchdowns as Patrick Mahomes, and he won the game by 18. So I don't know if they really balled out. I mean, Devontae had 60 yards. A.J. Brown had 40 yards. It was a team victory.
Correct. So to me, the better team won. Once again, I don't know if anybody offensively that balled out, but I do know this. Kansas City, their game plan was to stop Saquon. So in order to stop Saquon, you got to take away from other stuff. And they stopped Saquon, but they didn't really stop anything else. You know what I'm saying? Everybody kind of ate a little bit. Even though Saquon didn't get a load of yards, he still had his touches. Everybody kind of got theirs. You didn't really stop anybody. They didn't make any big plays when necessary. And like you said, at the end, if you would have looked at statistically, you go, wow, Kansas City probably won this game. When Philadelphia they just figured it out. If they played 10 times, I don't know if Kansas City's beating them. That wasn't
No,
a fluke.
not
That
that
I
team.
don't they're a better football team.
Where does Jalen Hurts rank when it comes to quarterbacks? I know you don't love rankings, but we talk so much about these quarterback rankings and where people stack up. Mahomes is first, obviously, because of everything that he's done. And we look at the MVP performances by guys like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and what Joe Burrow's been able to do. But Jalen Hurts has something that Allen and Burrow and Jackson don't have, and that's two trips to the Super Bowl with a Super Bowl championship. I mean, if anybody's, I think stock may have rose last night. And if you look at a guy like Jalen Hurts, who I was just saying before you got on air, I don't think anybody has been criticized or maligned going back to college. People saying he's a bum. And you have been a fan of Jalen Hurts from the beginning. I know that aspect of the game, you and I are never going to be cheering for the Eagles, but you have been high on Jalen Hurts for a long time. And I'm going to post it on social. I want you to read it. I think you'd like it or watch it, because I look at this kid who in college people were talking shit about him because he came out of the game against, when Tua went into the game at the halftime, which we never saw. And this guy's a bum. He's not going to amount to anything. Oh, he's a second-round pick. He's never going to get in there over Carson Wentz. Now who's laughing, Beck? I mean, the guy's a Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP. Nobody's going to take that away from him.
No, and everybody they want to have the answers. And for what I see, Jalen Hurts has it, whatever it is to you. Okay, there's some quarterbacks that are talented, but they don't have it. I think Jalen Hurts clearly has it. Some of these other quarterbacks, Justin Herbert and Josh Allen's and Lamar Jackson's, they're all very, very talented. But the reason why I can't put them above Jalen Hurts right now is I don't know if they're going to do what he does in those big moments because they haven't been there yet. Okay, so Jalen Hurts has been there. Donovan McNabb got there, pooped on himself. So we don't really know how people are going to react to these situations. Jalen Hurts is chill, man. Like, I know Jalen Hurts is not going to poop away the game. It's not bigger than Jalen Hurts. And he's starting to vault himself above Patrick Mahomes. Let's not change the narrative of somebody after one game that he was running around for his life. It's amazing how people want to have somebody drop a bunch of echelons because they don't like his girlfriend or they don't like this or that. Patrick Mahomes is no less great than he was 2 days ago.
Still got 3 Super Bowls.
The worst? I think this is 8th year or 7th year, something like that. The worst he's done is the AFC Championship. Shame on you if you say something about Patrick Mahomes. Shame.
He's 29 years old. Like, you're looking around there like, oh man, now. And I even got into a little bit last night, like, well, if Andy Reid's at the end and Travis Kelce is at the end, maybe, Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, but it's just like Patrick Mahomes is also phenomenal. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer right now. If Patrick Mahomes retired right now, he'd be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's better than all these other guys. I mean, there's not many quarterbacks in the history of the sport that have a better resume than him. And he's 29 years old. He's not going anywhere. Right. I mean, that's the thing we have to understand. Like, if anything, like I look at some of the guys where Travis Kelce last night, I didn't like his disposition. He didn't look like, it was weird. Like some of the efforts that he gave on some of the balls that he dropped, like, what do you make of the Kansas City performance as a whole? Is it just down to the trenches? Do you look at anything else? Because it's just, DeAndre Hopkins dropped a pass. Like, this is one of the more shorthanded guys we've seen in the last 10 years. It was just a weird performance. And again, I give so much credit to Philly, and I know you do too, but I watched that game and I watched Kansas City. They just didn't look like a champion last night. I didn't like their response when things weren't going well.
Well, I think I don't disagree with what you just said. But I think, and I've heard a lot of people saying things similar to what you just said, I don't know if we're giving Philadelphia enough credit
Right.
because, Kansas City just looked good last game. They looked good 2 games ago. They looked good 3 games ago. And then they look like crap against Philadelphia in the biggest game. And we're saying that what's wrong with Kansas City? We should be talking about what's right with Philadelphia because I'm not sure anybody else beats Kansas City in that situation. Philadelphia was pretty damn good, bro. Because when I was thinking about the game in my head, I'm like, okay, well, what what equation will have to happen to beat Kansas City? And I'll be damned if Philadelphia has the perfect equation or the tools for the perfect equation. But I still couldn't bet against Kansas City because I just thought that at the end of the game, if Patrick has that ball, it's going to be a problem. Now, obviously, it didn't get to that, and Philadelphia didn't want it to get to that. But it was really evident early in this game that Philadelphia wasn't having that, bro, because they didn't let Patrick Mahomes breathe all game long, and it was at the end it was an 18-point game. It was not even close to that. It wasn't that close.
The score was not indicative
No
of
way.
how not close that game was. Yeah, I'm with you. And I think as we go into the game, you try to analyze it for what it is, but there's so many unknown things and unspoken things about sports. There's historical perspective, right? You look at it and you say, yeah, you may be better here, but then I think in the Super Bowl that you could say both. I think you could argue that in both of the Super Bowls that Kansas City beat San Francisco, on paper, the Niners had a more talented roster.
Correct.
So that's why I think a lot of people had reservations of going against Kansas City because they've proven that even if they don't have the advantage in talent, that they can still win the game. But every game is different. And that's why you have to go out and play it. And I'm with you. You look at Philadelphia and you just go, I think it was more of what they did rather than what Kansas City didn't do.
And when you look at things that were leaning one way, 3 in a row for Kansas City, I think that would have been a great story. Uh, I don't care if you even understand football. Taylor Swift, like I actually found myself bringing up Taylor Swift when I was betting, and and now I look back and it's sad, but I was like, wow, I'm not a Taylor Swift fan by any means, but I'm like, oh, not they don't want Taylor Swift to be upset. Well, maybe Kansas City has to win because she has to smile because they got to show her 98 times and blah blah blah. So it didn't turn out that way. Kansas City is a Hollywood team. They're Hollywood, okay? They're probably the most Hollywood team. No,
Right.
nobody else has somebody dating, Taylor Swift, and nobody else is like Mahomes is like he got bad hair, but people like it. You know what I mean? They're
Mm-hmm.
they're very they're very Hollywood. So when they lose, people are gonna pile on, man, and they're gonna continue to pile on, and they're gonna say the window's closing. But that's all hate because next year, wouldn't bet your house that Kansas City won't be in it because I won't be shocked.
No, I'm with you. What was your take on did you like the Super Bowl the commercials or anything like that? Any of them stick out to you? Did you pay attention to the commercials at all?
Yeah, I did the Mike Calter show this morning, and I'm trying to think of the ones that stuck out.
I like the Seal Mountain Dew one. That was
The
my
Seal
jam.
one was cute, I'd
Yeah.
say. I don't know how many people in this generation know Seal, but
Yeah.
we were good with it. Um, I'll be honest with you, I don't really get too much into the commercials. I just give
Right.
a little chuckle here and there. I don't find there's that much creativity in it anymore. I
No,
really,
it seems
yeah,
dull, man. Like $8 million to spend on these commercials, and you just
yeah,
look at them and you're like, there's a couple of right ones, and it's just
yeah.
like I just think it's getting worse. I don't know if I'm getting more old, more ornery in my older age, but it didn't stand out. Like it wasn't like, oh wow, that was a good one, that was a good one. Like there was no competition. Like
Well, it
it was
seems
kind
like
of
there
weird.
used to be like you'd be waiting for like the Clydesdale ones or the Geico ones, and but what are we waiting for now? There's
Nah.
nothing really all that creative anymore. It seems like.
Yeah, I mean the Clydesdale one was a little baby Clydesdale, moving a keg up the hill to a bar. I was like, all right, like that was
Yeah,
yeah, just meh. Like that's
yeah.
the whole thing. It's like the whole thing was kind of like that. What did they have to say on Calta today about meeting your boy John Randall?
It was funny. Somebody texted me and said, "Hey, we ran into Randall Cunningham, and he says hello, and that he used to room
Oh
with
yeah.
you." And I'm like, "No, I didn't room. I didn't room with Randall Cunningham. You crazy? He must have CTE." What they said Randall, they meant John Randall.
Ah,
So when I saw the interview with John Randall brought my name up out of the blue was, oh yeah, I used to room with Ian Beckles, and Mike Calta was like, what? Like, why would you bring that name up? So that was kind of fun. Um, John Randall, I played against him 15 times. We did room together here in Tampa way back in the day. Um, it's not something you want to do 15 times, but now that I look back, I almost should put it on my tombstone
Right.
because most people don't survive 15 times against John Randall. They don't. A lot of them don't survive too, to be honest with you.
How did it go though?
The 15 times.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to say I'm a historian of football, but I remember almost everything in a weird way. The other day, Tom Ponzo was asking me, he goes, you know how many penalties you had in your career? And he told me how many, and I started to ramble them off. Like, I remembered when I got penalties. So I remember weird stuff. I think I gave up one sack to John Randall in 15
That's
times. He
pretty
had a lot
good,
of
man.
sacks. He had a
It's
lot of
pretty
sacks, so
good.
that's pretty good.
Who was the guy that you think out of all the big names outside of him, who do you think you did the best against?
Reggie White.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I blocked. My thing is, I blocked the Reggie Whites and the John Randall and Chester McLaughlin and Howie Long and those type of names. Those are all Hall of Fame names. I blocked them well. But
Mhm.
then if you ask me about Frank Warren and Keith Hamilton and some guys like that, they weren't the biggest names, but what they had was hard to deal with. So
What was
sometimes not.
what
It's
was
not
so
about the
different?
big names.
What was so different about those guys?
They were big. They were tall.
Yeah.
Like Reggie White was tall. Reggie White tried to use leverage, and that was kind of my strength. John Randall was he had a lot to deal with, but I matched up well with him. Keith Hamilton and Frank Warren were just like 6'7", long arm, mean leverage players, and I just didn't match up. I didn't match clearly. I did not match up well against them because I would not want to see that film. It was not pretty.
What is going on within the trenches and everything at the Dignitary Kava House and Cigar Shop there?
Well, I mean, we're going through our little thing, and we have cigars now. That you say we were not really a
Nice.
cigar shop, but we have cigars. We have cigar nights on Thursday. Um, in the trenches, we're gonna right now. We're just kind of putting together. I'm getting a few of my former teammates together. We're gonna start interviewing them in the off season. I did Martin Gramatica a couple weeks ago, and we're gonna start interviewing some old school dudes. And I think people want to hear from some of these kind of where are they now type of thing. And I know 620 said they were going to air it. So, just staying relevant and trying to bring some old school cats back into in the limelight.
You know who else has been saying that the battle was won in the trenches? My Uncle Wally right here chiming in saying great stuff. He was on the board, Beck,
Oh, yeah.
and he knew the deal. Uncle Wall, he was saying the trenches, that's where his won
Mm-hmm.
and lost. And he's a big Giants fan. He's been saying that the Giants need to fortify those trenches on both sides of the ball. So if you can, tell him that he knows what the hell he's talking
Uncle Wall, I feel for you as a Giants fan, and they got to do a lot more than that, brother.
about. We need a quarterback, a running back, this guy, that guy. It's gonna be a long time. Ian Beckles, follow him on all social media platforms at Ian Beckles. Make sure you check out the Beckles and Recher podcast right around 3:15, 3:30 every Wednesday on YouTube. Beck, appreciate it, brother. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Show your shirt, dog. One love.
Oh yeah, I forgot I got the Dignitary.
Dignitary, baby. Let's go.
Oh, this is one of my favorite shirts too.
That's
It's
what I'm
toy,
talking about.
and I got to rock my pink joints with it too.
That's what I'm talking about.
All right, one love, my brother.
All right, kid.
See you, man.